You are listening to Season 3, Episode 32, Cubs Heart-Stopping Arizona Adventures. Don't forget to listen, download, review, most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on the socials. Fly the W670 on Twitter, Instagram. Of course, we're on Facebook, and you can email Crawly and I, flythew670 at gmail.com. Well, Crawly, that was quite a series that just wrapped up out in Arizona, Cubs and Diamondbacks.
Dustin, I mean, that was just the whole thing, man. The West Coast road trip, thank God it's done. The lack of sleep, just the wildness of just the entire series. And you know what? The Cubs come home from a 9-game road trip with a 5-4 with a winning record on this road trip. And everything that has happened, I mean, it is just unbelievable. Something about this team, Dustin, there's a resilience to this team. And I'm very impressed. I know there's frustrating moments, but I am impressed with how the Cubs have handled themselves.
I think resiliency is a good way to look at it. It's a good way to put it. I am impressed. I do have lots of questions, but there are injury issues, but every team is dealing with injury issues. But sometimes Craig Counsell really, really makes me scratch my head already. I'm not sure that I am seeing the best that money can buy when it comes to managing a baseball game.
Well, maybe when we look at the standings, you will think differently. I mean, everything's a possibility at this point, and
anything is possible.
Right, but here we are. You know, I would always wonder the same thing with how is Craig Counsell doing this when he was in Milwaukee. I'd always look at the standings, and there the Brewers always were. And guess what? Look at the standings, and we will later in segment 3. You'll see where the Cubs are, and you tell me, after as tough a series as they've had to play a lot of good teams. They've had to do a West Coast road trip. They've barely played any home games, and they're almost in first place.
Right. Listen, I understand. There's just questions. I just listen. Maybe when we go through this, we can discuss the questions that I have. I just have questions.
I have questions too.
I have questions. That's all.
I just like
questions. I'm not off the bandwagon. I just have some questions.
I just like the results, but I have questions myself that we'll ask. So hopefully we can.
Let's just skip ahead to Game 3. Okay, just skip ahead to Game 3, just real quick. Forget about the results of Game 3, which we all know are good. What did you think when you saw Miles Masterboni and Mike Tuchman in left and right field?
I had questions.
Okay, thank you. That's all. I got you on that one. I got questions. We can move on.
I'm with
now.
you on that one.
Let's go back. Let's go back to Game 1. Let's talk about Ben Brown starting, but I just got some questions.
Okay, so Ben Brown starts Game 1, like you said, versus Merrill Kelly, and we talked about how this was going to be a good measuring stick for Ben to go up against one of the premier pitchers in the league, and Ben was up for the challenge. He went 6 innings pitched, gave up only 1 run on 1 hit with 2 walks and 4 Ks. Another strong performance for Brown. And Dustin, to me, he's making his case to stay in the rotation. We're going to talk a lot about Hendricks and all this other stuff. But to me, I don't want to see him in the bullpen. I don't want to see him in Iowa. I'd like to see him in the rotation.
Yeah, I agree. He's doing everything right. He's doing everything to make everybody sit up and notice. And I don't know how you can't be impressed with the young man right now.
No, and it was a good old-fashioned pitcher's duel as Merrill Kelly kept the Cubs off balance. Going 5 innings pitch. He gave up only 1 run on 3 hits with 5 Ks and 2 walks. The only run he gave up was to Michael Busch, who was in the top of the 2nd inning. He hits a home run in his 5th consecutive game into the pool area, Dustin. Everybody in the pool.
It was a splash bomb.
A splash bomb. And this is just Sarah Lang put this up. Michael Busch homered in 5 consecutive games, tying the Cubs record for consecutive games with the home run. Christopher Morel did it in 2023, Sammy Sosa in 1998, Sandberg in 89, and the legendary Hack Wilson in 1928. I love that.
Yeah,
Ron
pretty good company. Pretty good company there.
Coomer pulling up the Hack Wilson 191 RBIs. People forget that. That's I don't think that's a stat that's ever going to be broken, Dustin.
No, I don't think so either. No. But I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it if it happens.
Oh, yeah. Now, that lead did not last long as Ben Brown lost his control in the 2nd inning. He walked Christian Walker to start off the inning, got 2 outs, and then he walked Gabriel Moreno to put runners at 1st and 2nd. Jake McCarthy singled to score Walker, and the game was tied at 1. We talked about the growing pains with young pitchers on the last episode with Jordan Wicks walking batters. The leadoff walk scored, and there were 3 base runners in the inning on only 1 hit. So, fact, Dustin, the leadoff walk scores between 22 and 34% of the time. But other than that little blip, like we talked about, Brown's super impressive.
Yeah. Really, really impressed with him. I mean, you got to be impressed with the guy. Just no stage is too big, really handled himself well. It was really good.
Now it would go in the battle of the bullpens, and following Ben Brown was Luke Little, who went 1 inning and he gave up no hits, no walk, and 1 strikeout. How awesome, Dustin, for the Cubs to have the starter throwing upper 90s and then the first guy out of the bullpen throwing upper 90s, both homegrown talent.
Homegrown talent. Yep, homegrown talent. It's really what this is all about, what we're talking about here.
Now, Drew Smyly came into the game in the 8th inning. He looked good lately, but it wasn't his night with 1 out. Former Cardinal Randall Grichuk came in to pinch hit and hit a double. Dustin, this team's got Eugenio Suarez, Kevin Newman, and Grichuk. Are the Diamondbacks purposely collecting players that hit against the Cubs?
It would seem like it, right? It sure would seem like, past Cub killers.
Now, Smyly did strike out Newman for the 2nd out. He intentionally walked righty Kettle Marte, which was a smart move to get to lefty Corbin Carroll. He singled to give the D-backs a 2-1 lead. Now, in comes Diamondbacks closer Kevin Grinkle. He came into the game with 1 out. He gives up back-to-back singles to Nico Horner and Mike Tauchman to put the tying run at 2nd. With Ian Happ up and 2 outs down to their final batter, Ginkle's pitch hits off the dirt, bounces off the catcher who can't find the ball as it ricochets towards the first base dugout, and Nico Horner scored all the way from 2nd on a wild pitch to tie the game. He's doing an airplane, and the crowd's going nuts. A mainly Cubs crowd in Arizona as usual.
Well, and a hell of a send by Willie Harris, right?
Oh, I love Willie Harris.
Hell of a send.
Yes. And so Hector Neris comes into the game in the 9th. He gives up a 1-out walk to Jock Peterson, and Peterson was replaced with pinch runner Blaze and Alexander. With a name like Blaze, you better run fast. Yeah. He was caught stealing by Yan Gomes, though. Off to extras. Neither team scores in the 10th, but in the 11th, with the man for man at 2nd, Michael Busch walked, followed by a Garrett Cooper single to load the bases. Nico Horner, who's been off to an extremely slow start, singled to put the Cubs up 3-2, still had the bases loaded with no outs, and the Cubs could not score another run. Dustin, how frustrating was that?
No, that was frustrating. The old runners in scoring position, men left on base stat that I love when we have to get into that one.
Right. You can't have the bases loaded, no outs, and only score 1 run. That's unacceptable. Tauchman grounded into force out, Busch threw out at home, and then Gomes and Happ struck out. And the Cubs, even though they had the lead, it felt like a missed opportunity and a momentum shift. It was up to Keegan Thompson to finish this one out.
But how about that? Keegan Thompson. I mean, come on.
Right. He comes out in the 10th inning, gives up a leadoff walk, but then easily sat down the next 3 batters. He came out in the 11th, sat him down 1-2-3 with a strikeout to Christian Walker to end the game. Dustin, we talked about this on the last episode about Keegan. When he was good in 2022, he was throwing 94, 95. This was him on Friday night. And for those watching the 670 The Score YouTube channel, all the fastballs that you see here are 94, 95 miles per hour.
Yeah, all plus, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's the difference when we see him. His velo's up and he's doing good, and the Cubs are able to steal the game.
Steal the game, indeed, and that was the game that you and I did not like on paper at all for the Cubs based on the starting pitcher. So we move into game 2. It's Kyle Hendricks, who has really struggled, but he's taking on Tommy Henry for the Diamondbacks, who we thought the Cubs could get to.
Yeah, I was nervous about that game with Kyle, and I'm going to turn it over to my partner for the recap. Here we go.
There were 23 runs scored. There were 26 hits, 6 doubles, 2 triples, 4 homers, 1 grand slam. That was by Ian Happ. 13 walks, 13 strikeouts, 1 pass ball, 1 hit by pitch, 2 wild pitches, 2 errors, 3 sacrifice flies, 3 stolen bases, 1 caught stealing, 3 pitch clock violations, 5 ties, and lead changes. Time of game, 3 hours and 38 minutes, and a partridge in a pear tree.
I heard that this morning, Dustin, and I had to get that clip. That was absolutely legendary there.
Yeah, that was about what it was. And, of course, I was kidding about the partridge in a pear tree. But you talk about a game that had a little bit of everything, and I mean everything, even pitch clock violations. That game had it.
Well, it was tied in the bottom of the 3rd at 1. Kyle gave up a single and then a home run to Lourdes Gurriel. Then he gave up another home run in the inning to former Cub Jock Peterson, his first of the year, to give the Diamondbacks a 4-1 lead. But the Cubs offense, Dustin, which had been struggling lately, came alive in the fourth. Miguel Amaya, RBI triple. Alexander Canario in his first start hit an RBI double, as did Nico Horner. Cody Bellinger triple put the Cubs ahead 5-4 with still 1 out. Tommy Henry's night's done, but reliever Scott McGough got Christopher Morel the strikeout swinging and Garrett Cooper out to leave Bellinger stranded at the third. So you didn't think of it, against the Diamondbacks, you need as many runs as you can get. And that was a frustrating that they couldn't get that runner in from third with 1 out.
Yeah. Sure was.
Now, after the Cubs get back in this, leading 5-4, Craig Counsell decides to keep Kyle Hendricks in the game after they took the lead. He proceeds to load the bases. That's a question. So here's where I would push back on your question there. And that's just because, Dustin, they are literally, after an extra inning game, they have to get more out of Kyle. You can't keep going to the bullpen in the third or fourth inning.
I understand that, but okay, I have no problem with them bringing him back out. But after he allows the single, that's it. You're done. You're out. You're out. You're out.
If it wasn't for extra innings the day before, maybe. If the bullpen isn't consistently throwing more innings than the starters, maybe. It's you got to get something out of these guys. Kyle didn't give up a run in the fourth, and unfortunately, he gave up a single and 2 walks. So the bases are loaded. He's done. Luke Little comes in. He throws a wild pitch. Walked Jock Peterson, threw another wild pitch, gave up a sac fly. There was a pass ball and error on Miguel Amaya, and then Blaze Alexander singled, and the Cubs were down 8-5. So
all right, let's go back to that real quick. Hold on.
Yep.
The questions are going to continue, Crawly. Do not skip ahead. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Luke Little, you and I are fans, like the guy, but I can't remember, and I'm sure he has, but I can't remember Luke Little coming into a game with the bases loaded, like that high leverage of situation. Now it's on Luke Little. Okay. Luke Little bounced 2 balls in. That's Luke Little's fault at the end of the day. But would it, again, we're in hindsight, armchair quarterbacking, armchair pitching coaching, whatever way you want to look at it. Mark Leiter Jr. would have been a better, Mark Leiter Jr. comes in high pressure situations with the bases loaded with runners on second and third. That's Mark Leiter territory. I know it's early in the game, but it almost felt like I didn't quite understand why. And listen, I'm sure there's some kind of stats this thick if you're watching on YouTube channel, right? That say, oh, this is why Luke Little, but that was one that really made me scratch my head.
Agree. That was a real high leverage situation, and Mark Leiter would have been the guy that you would have come. But you know what? Sometimes you got to figure out if Luke Little is a high leverage situation guy.
You got to find out, right?
Yeah.
You're right. You got to find out if he can in fact do that job. And unfortunately, at least that night, he could not.
Now for Kyle Hendricks, he went 4.1 innings, gave up 7 runs, 3 of those while Luke Little was pitching, but he loaded the bases, 5 hits, 3 walks, 3 Ks. He gave up 2 home runs. His ERA is over 12. We're going to get back. We're going to circle back to this, Dustin, but not what we were looking for. But the offense came roaring back in the 7th, scoring on a Dansby Swanson single to cut the deficit to 8-5. Christopher Morel sac fly made it 8-6, and a Garrett Cooper single brought the Cubs within 1 run of Arizona. But the big bash of the inning was Ian Happ's first home run of the season, a grand slam to put the Cubs up 11-8, and you're feeling pretty good. Unfortunately, the bullpen couldn't make it hold up. Daniel Palencia, who pitched a shaky but scoreless 6th inning, came out in the 7th, issued a leadoff walk. Eugenio Suarez, who would then immediately score on a Blaze Alexander double to cut the lead to 11-9. Palencia's night was through, and here comes Mark Leiter, and he didn't allow a hit. In the bottom of the 9th, Dustin, Nico Horner hit a 1-out triple, but Dansby Swanson and Cody Bellinger both struck out swinging to end the threat. That was the second time in the game the Cubs stranded a 1-out triple. Leiter came on in the bottom of the 8th, and Corbin Carroll would then reach on a fielding error by Dansby Swanson. Now, the ball had an exit velocity of 109 miles per hour, but if Dansby wants to repeat as a Gold Glover, he has to make that play.
Yeah, he's been just okay so far this year. Kind of, right? Kind of,
Yeah. And if you got other,
not thrilled, not thrilled with him right this second. He's got great hair, good guy, but kind of so
And
far.
if you're putting down questions for Craig Counsell, can I ask why he's batting second in the lineup? I don't want to see that anymore. I'm not interested in that.
No,
But
I mean, I understand him moving up a slot with Seiya being out, but why second? I guess the question would be, who would you bat? Who would you prefer to see? Christopher Morel? I mean, who would you bat second instead of him?
this whole year, I've always liked the idea of Ian leading off and Nico behind him. That's the way I like it. But that's me.
Okay.
So after the air, Yancy Almonte came in and he walks the first two batters he faced to load the bases. A Jock Peterson sac fly cut the lead to 11-10, but Almonte is able to get out of the next two outs, strands the bases loaded. But again, Arizona scored a run, Dustin, on no hits. The air, 2 walks, and a sac fly. Just cannot happen.
No, not good enough. Not good enough.
In the bottom of the 9th, the Cubs are still up 11-10. Adbert Alzolay on to close it out. He gets the first 2 runners out. Arizona is down to their final out when Alzolay gives up a solo home run to Ketel Marte to tie the game.
Now, are we sure that was a home run?
It was called a home run. I didn't see anything that could go one way or the other to overturn it. I'm not sure.
I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure either. I'm still not quite sure. That was a weird one.
Now, the Cubs could not score with the man-for-man in the top of the 10th, and in the bottom of the 10th, Drew Smiley's on the mound a night after throwing 26 pitches. He gives up a double to the first batter he faces, Grandal Grichuk, to win the game 12-11. Dustin, as exciting as game 1 was in extra innings, this was equally as painful. A struggling Cubs offense broke out 11 runs on 14 hits. Guys that were struggling, Dustin, had big games. Nico, 4 for 5 with a triple and RBI. Ian Happ, 3 for 5 with a double and a grand slam. But Kyle was awful, and the bullpen went 6 innings, gave up 5 runs on 7 hits with 7 walks, 2 Ks, and 2 wild pitches. You can't get that out of your bullpen. That's just can't happen.
No, and how about this stat? Speaking of, we came in with my little fun partridge in a pear tree. How about this? The Cubs offense did something that has only happened one other time in the history of Major League Baseball. In the last 100 years, Crawly, 2 MLB teams have had a game with at least 4 doubles, 3 triples, 2 innings of 4+ runs, and a grand slam. That was the 1927, the Murderers Row New York Yankees, and they won a game 21-1 back on July 4th. The Cubs did it last night and lost. I mean, how about that? I mean, in the history of this game that we love, that's happened 2 times. And the only other time it happened, the team that did it won 21-0.
Again, when I woke up in the morning, I couldn't believe it. When you see the amount of hits, the amount of runs, the amount of home runs and triples, it was stunning. I can't believe it.
Absolutely stunning is right.
Now, this was the game that I was really kind of watching carefully. You had Brandon Pfaadt going up against.
Hold on, now I don't know how much of this game you got to hear on the score today. But the great Pat Hughes had a great interpretation of his name. And I got to get it for you because it's not Pfaadt. It's not Pfaadt. That's not how Pat Hughes was saying it. He went through this whole thing about how the P and the H and the this and the that. And I'll get the audio for next week, play it for everybody. But it's not Pfaadt. It's not Pfaadt. According to Pat Hughes, it's not Pfaadt.
Whatever it is, he pitched a good game, but so did Jordan Wicks, Dustin. I really wanted to see how he would bounce back after the last start. It didn't look good as Ketel Marte leads off with a homer, and thank God we're leaving that guy, man. That guy is on a heater right now.
Well, I mean, and feel free. I'm not talking about the first time he's up to bat, but how about the third time he's up to bat? How about just maybe walk him? Maybe? Even Ron, I didn't even have to say it. I'm thinking it, Crawly. I'm running an errand. Running to the Jewels, picking up some home run and pizzas, and Coomer's like, feel free to walk the guy. Feel, and that's usually me. And here was Ron Coomer saying, feel free to walk the guy. He's killing you. Even though I know he's got Corbin Burns behind him, but feel free to walk the guy.
Yeah, Carroll's a tough guy to face, but Corbin Carroll right now is hitting 225,
right? And
Ketel Marte's hitting 325,
right? Big. Listen, public school educated, but that's a big difference. I can do that math.
Well, luckily in the top of the 5th, The Cubs got on the board. Nico Horner reached on a fielding error by third baseman Eugenio Suarez. Always glad to hear Pat Hughes say that name. And then Mike Tauchman. We talked about that Tauchman Master-Boney outfield, but hey, Tauchman did his part. He doubled to tie the game at 1. And then Yan Gomes singled on a line drive to score Tauchman and make it a 2-1 Cubs lead. That did not hold long. Dustin, of all the guys that you didn't think would hit a double in this game, how about Tucker Barnhart for the Diamondbacks in the bottom of the 5th?
Mm-hmm. I always liked the guy. I thought he was nice, but did he get a hit when he was a Cub? I mean, gosh.
Of all the guys, a double for Tucker Barnhart to lead it off. And then, of course, Kevin Newman has a great at bat. He advances the runner to third. And then this is, I think, what Ron was talking about. Ketel Marte's single to tie the game.
Right.
And luckily, the Cubs were able to get out of the inning without any more damage in that situation. But, it's tied now at 2. And then we get into the bottom of the inning now. And when you get into the 6th, Cody Bellinger belly bomb into the pool, 3-2 game. You're feeling pretty good. And, Jordan Wicks had a really good game. He ended up going 4.1 innings, gave up 5 hits, 2 runs. They were both earned, 1 walk and 5 Ks. But it was really Ketel Marte show that was doing all the damage against him.
Yeah. I mean, the guy was a double away from the cycle, right?
Right.
Or maybe a triple away from the cycle.
Triple away from the cycle. And so, as fun as all of that is, right? Wicks only goes 4.1, so he's out in the 5th. And in comes recently called up Hayden Wesneski, but no, it was not Wesneski. It was Wesnasty.
Yeah, boy. Yep. Mm-hmm. He shut the door down on him.
Woo! 4 innings pitched, gave up 1 hit, 2 Ks. Absolutely fit. That's the Hayden Wesneski that we all remember when he came up in 2022. One heck of an outing. And how about the Cubs adding on a little bit of bonus, some insurance runs in the 8th? Dustin, maybe you want to ask the Diamondbacks managers. I got some questions for him. Here we are right now, top of the 8th, 1 out. Dansby Swanson singles. He beats out an infield single. And then Cody Bellinger singles on a line drive, 2 errors on the play. The first on Gurriel, and then another by Eugenio Suarez trying to get out Bellinger at second. It was like a bloop in between them, and Gurriel can't make the play. And so they called it a single. Originally, we thought it was an error originally. And so Swanson scores, and then Bellinger gets to third because of the error on Suarez. But then the manager has Joe Mantiply intentionally walk Christopher Morel. Dustin, Christopher Morel could not hit a ball with an oar right now. We'll get to the hots and knots, but he walks Christopher Morel to get to Michael Busch. I know it's a lefty-lefty matchup. I don't care. In that situation, I'm going at Morel. Busch, even though his home run streak ended on Tuesday night, he just missed a home run by like 2 feet, and he just missed a home run today by about 2 feet. And so you're going to face him. He singles to make it 5-2. I don't know what the manager was. I would have gone against Morel. I would not have gone against Busch in that situation, regardless of what the stats say.
Totally agree with you. Thank God we're not on Arizona radio.
And so at the end there, Drew Smiley came in. He gave up a home run to Jock Peterson.
But again, Drew Smiley got the ball.
He got the next couple of outs and ended the game, and the Cubs win. But Dustin, to me, the biggest takeaway, there's 2 in these series. Number 1 is the offense came back to life. They really were struggling for a little bit. And we're going to talk about Seiya Suzuki's injury, but the fact that they were able to do that without one of their best hitters was amazing. But Kyle Hendricks, it was, how long is the leash going to be? There was a couple things. Hoyer was on talking on 670 The Score. Here's what he had to say about Kyle.
We've talked to you about Kyle Hendricks so much over the years. I think you said that he is your favorite player that you've interacted with the Cubs, or that you've never had a negative interaction. Everybody loves him, obviously. Does that make it more difficult when he's struggling, when your job is to be dispassionate and put the best guys out there?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I literally the lowest maintenance employee / teammate I've ever had. He's incredible, and just a joy to be around. And I think you look at his career, I think he's just made the most of what he had over and over and over. And I feel like he's had his times of struggles in the past, and he's gotten through them. And, my hope is that this is another one of those times. I feel like the third time through the order has really bitten him so far this year, and that's something obviously he's going to have to work through. He's also faced, Rangers, Dodgers, Padres, which I think has been a tough slate for him early in the season. But yeah, he's obviously, he would say it, and that he expects more of himself, and obviously we expect him to pitch well. But I think there's, we have to remember we're 3 starts into his season. He's got, what does he have, 29 more probably. So I think that giving him a little bit of leeway and time to work his way through it, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I try to remember over and over that, the things we think about in April and the things that we talk about in April, like so oftentimes by June, let alone August, seem so remote. So that's.
I get what he's saying there, Dustin.
Let's hope. Let's hope it's remote come June or August. But the question's going to be, right, when his spot comes up in the rotation, and it is now official, even though Tommy Hotovy told us earlier this morning, Jamison Tyone is going to start on Thursday. Okay, that he is going to start on Thursday. So, when you come around again, there's a couple too many guys in the rotation right now.
So I would say, and I called in today, the Mully Haw show this morning, and I didn't, you don't get to have like the big conversation because there's a lot of callers and commercial breaks to run up against. But to me right now, I'm not taking Ben Brown out of the rotation. I think Jordan Wicks showed me something today. What he is saying is true. Kyle is not a good pitcher in April. He never has been throughout his career. It's always been bad. His career ERA is over 5 in the month of April. This seems a little bit different, though. He's having a lot of uncompetitive pitches. He's not even close with his control. There's some concerns. And the one thing I would say, and Jed mentioned it in the clip, and this is what I told you guys on the Mully and Haw show, I don't want an opener. I don't want Kyle going 1 inning. I like the piggyback situation of having Kyle start and see how he does, see how he's throwing the ball. And if he runs into any trouble in the 3rd, in the 4th, whatever, you can then go ahead and put in Javier Assad. You saw what Hayden Wesneski did today, piggybacking off Jordan Wicks and saving the bullpen. That's what I'm envisioning. And again, just watch him closely. And if he starts to get in trouble, he starts, like you said, in that 5th inning, 1 single, okay, pull him out, done. Let's get Javier Assad in there. That's what I'm thinking in my mind.
Right. And I mean, look at what happened with Wesneski today. Right?
Exactly the same thing. Yes.
I mean, so that's something else you got to look at.
If you have Wesneski and Assad and they can go 3 or 4 innings on guys that have short starts, it's a big deal.
Right. Yeah, it is a big deal indeed. Well, Crawly, that was a heck of a road trip. And now the Cubs are going to come home and take on the Marlins for 4. We'll get into that in just a couple of minutes. This is the Fly the W670 podcast. It is episode 32 of season number 3. Cubs heart-stopping Arizona adventure. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. In this segment, Crawly interviews the Sun-Times Cubs beat reporter Maddie Lee about Seiya Suzuki's injury, Michael Busch's hot start, Shota Imanaga, and Ian Happ's vision training. Check it out.
Joining me live from Arizona, you know her from the Chicago Sun-Times Cubs beat, Maddie Lee. Maddie, how you doing?
I'm good. Soaking up the sun out here.
Yeah, the last time I saw you was in Mesa. I think it was that prospect game where we almost got blew away by a storm under a tent. That was exciting, but it's got to be fun to be back in Arizona.
Yeah, it's quick. I feel we just left, but what can you do?
Hey, it has been a short season so far, but it feels like so much has happened in this short amount of time. And, I always read your articles on the Sun-Times, always just great stuff. First things first, you guys get to Arizona and all of a sudden I'm looking at Alexander Canario's getting called up. I'm trying to figure out what the heck happened. And the next thing you know, Seiya Suzuki's injured. When you were in the clubhouse and you got to talk to him, was there like a sense of, just real disappointment? Because he was on a tear.
He really was. He was actually pretty positive. I think it helps that it feels better than his oblique strain last year. Different side, too, is a positive, that it's not just the same side continuing to get pulled. And so I think he has a pretty optimistic outlook here. We'll see exactly what the timeline ends up being. When we talked to him and Craig Counsell yesterday, they hadn't gotten the results back, so they didn't want to talk specifically about timeline and exactly how severe the injury might be. But in general, a sense of optimism. But obviously, it hurts to lose his bat in this offense. There's no way around that.
Yeah, I mean, he was obviously one of the best hitters on the team, but another guy that's been making all sorts of stories is Michael Busch. And Maddie, I mean, I remember when they traded for him, and I didn't think he'd make it for CubsCon. You remember there's that storm, and next thing I know, the guy is on the stage, and it just seems like he's adapted to this team so quickly. Has he talked to you guys a little bit about the success so far early in the season?
Yeah, he's actually brought up CubsCon several times and just how welcoming the whole team was. And, obviously like a wild 24 hours for him there, trying to make it out there, meeting all his new teammates, all of that. But I mean, it's a big role that he was just kind of plopped into. He was kind of blocked with the Dodgers, and then he gets traded, and suddenly they're saying, like, all right, you're our first baseman, and we'll see what happens. And he's absolutely taken that and run with it. And last night extends his home run streak to tie the franchise record along with Christopher Morel. And big names like Sammy Sosa and Ryan Sandberg, a great list to be on. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun to watch the early goings here.
Now, he was called up last year for the Dodgers and just really didn't have the success that he's having right now. What did he work on the offseason to kind of maybe make some adjustments to the way that the league was pitching him?
Sure. I think it's a combination of things too. Like, it is clear that the league was trying to take advantage of high heaters and maybe some struggles there. But also, he just wasn't getting regular at bats. And I don't think, we talk about that enough, that it's really hard to stay in a groove when you're just getting at bats here and there, being used off the bench, what have you. Because in AAA, he was absolutely demolishing the ball. And now we're getting to see some of that carrying over. So he definitely did work some on, Dustin Kelly, Cubs hitting coach, talks all the time about how it's a little difficult for left-handed hitters who are right-hand dominant to make sure that they're getting up to that high heater, because there's a tendency, because that's your front hand, right? So there's a tendency to pull across the strike zone with that dominant hand. And so working on one-hand drills with both hands, stuff like that, plenty of different drills that he's done and can continue to do. But I think probably the biggest thing, like, yes, he did work hard, but he's also just getting some runway and some regular at bats, and I think that goes a long way.
I think another big story besides Michael Busch has been Shota Imanaga, another guy that popped up right at CubsCon. And it is so amazing, just his personality is just so unique, and everything from the jersey to the song he picked, it just seems like he's just, sometimes it's hard that coming from one culture to another, it's extremely difficult, but he seems to be adapting so quickly.
Yeah, I wrote about this the other day. Feel free to check it out in the Sun Times. But he's made such a concerted effort, like you saw in that introductory press conference, him making sure that he did his introductory remarks in English and did part of Go Cubs Go and all of that. And like that obviously got a big reaction there were fans watching from the back of the press conference since it was CubsCon there. And so like that was a great way to endear himself to fans. When I was talking to him the other day about it, he practiced that for like 2.5 hours. He said it was like an hour and change the day before and an hour and change the day of. And like, that's not easy to have, to speak that long in a language that you're not familiar with. But he's made concerted effort to do that and connect with the fans, but also he wanted to be able to talk with his teammates, and he, like, when he can, will go out there without an interpreter so that he's making sure he's getting the direct communication. He's talked about the importance of like throwing around the football with the guys and like learning little things like, all right, guys, chew gum and spit seeds in the dugout and all of that. So yeah, I think it's been very top of mind, and he's obviously pitched very well, and so that helps when to make you a fan favorite.
And, just from wearing Zobrist's number to the Chelsea dagger. And then I think, and you wrote in your article that, those guys that wrote Shota on their chest outside in the freezing cold, Joe Johnson, our friend from Obvious Shirts, making shirts, and he's, that he wants to give to these guys. I mean, it's just remarkable how much he's taken the city by storm so far.
Yeah, he said that he was just really worried about them catching colds. So when Joe reached out, he was all for making something happen.
That's absolutely wonderful. Now, last night was an exciting game when you got, Nico Horner and, that pitch that just got away from the catcher, bounces towards the first base dugout, and Nico does a little airplane and sliding around and stuff like that. But, for a guy that stole so many bases, you wrote about this in your article as well, about the Cubs just not stealing a lot of bases right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting combination because you wouldn't say that this has been a passive team on the bases. And there's tons of examples, the most recent being Nico scoring on a wild pitch. But you go back to that opening series in Texas and, Michael Busch going in and scoring in that weird play where Jonah Heim was arguing with the umpire and he takes advantage of that moment. So there's a lot of them that you can point to. Last I checked, fewest stolen bases in the league. But when I talked to Nico about this too, a lot of it is opportunity. And you could spin it as a good sign that they haven't necessarily needed to steal bases in order to score because they've had a lot of guys who have had strong starts to the year. We'll see if that changes with Seiya out. But a lot of stolen bases comes down to opportunity. Nico Horner had the most stolen bases for the team last year, and he's had a combination of guys in front of him, right? He's often had Michael Busch in front of him who's getting on base. But then also he pointed out just times when he's on base, but feels really good about Ian Happ's at bat. And so he's not going to push it there. And, he's going to have some trust that he's going to move him over. So I think there will be times when we see a lot more stolen bases from this team. And the beginning is just not one of them.
Maddie, you just mentioned Ian Happ, and you wrote an article that was really interesting to me about vision training, and Ian Happ talking about that being baseball's next frontier. For our listeners who may not have caught it, and I'm going to attach the article to when we start putting stuff out for this episode here, but what is Ian doing as far as his vision training?
Yeah, so his journey with vision training, it has been a long one and a very interesting one, and kind of as I wrote, intersects with some really pivotal moments in his career. Right now, he's settled into a routine that includes juggling, includes these vision cards. Sometimes he'll use a string that goes from your nose and you kind of trace the string because it creates an X with your vision. Lots of stuff like that. And what I thought was most interesting talking with him, he's been doing stuff like this on and off since college. College was when he was really introduced to it. And there's been times when he's picked it up, times when he's, decided not to use it as much. It's really hard to measure the exact effect, right? There's so many other things going on. You can't point a straight line between, Ian Happ's on base and what he's doing vision training wise. And I really appreciate how open he was about that fact. And there are ways, this didn't make the story, but there are ways to kind of measure the way your eyes, there are different goggles and such, glasses that will measure how your eyes move and things like that. But there just hasn't been a concerted effort to completely commit to that from a baseball MLB perspective. And so he's kind of taken this on and come to the conclusion of in the end, if he's doing this consistently and it makes him feel good and makes him feel confident at the plate, does it really matter if he can measure the exact effect?
Are there any other players that are kind of trying to pick it up from him, or are DK and Justin Maley and those guys, or John Maley and those guys, are they, kind of, working with other players on it, or is it more Ian kind of doing routines that he has kind of outside of what the team does?
So it's Ian definitely has been doing this on and off in his career, and like he's been the driving force for his own. The Cubs do have some things set up in the cage, like the strings, different charts and such, so that guys who want to can use them. But Ian's definitely the one who has really taken that and run with it.
Yeah, it reminds me of Jake Arrieta when he had all those crazy Pilates machines and stuff like that. But, now that Ian this year, last year he was in the 3 spot pretty much pencil every single day with David Ross's lineup, but now he's back to the leadoff spot. And, I think with when you talk about that eye training and his on base percentage, even when he struggles, if he's in a cold slump or something like that, at least he can still get on base. And I like having him in leadoff. Did he mention anything as far as preference in the order, or does it not matter to him really?
He's been pretty open to it. Last year his clear preference was batting third. And I know there were times when Cubs fans were lamenting that fact, when he wasn't hitting as well. But like you said, he was still getting on base, and the Cubs don't really have a guy who's like that typical speedster, high on base type of player. And so him having, that really high OBP and being able to get on in front of guys like, Bellinger once he starts getting going, and Seiya when he was healthy, really, really helped. And so, I think as we got into the season, it looked like it was going to be, mostly playing matchups, but he's settled into kind of an everyday sort of role there. Craig Counsell's very open about like what happens in the first couple weeks of a season doesn't necessarily mean that that's what we're going to be doing for a whole year in terms of lineup construction, in terms of roster, especially when he's talking about the bullpen and who might be up and down. So, the fact that Ian's in there every day doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be there for the whole season. We've seen him do, hit lead off in stretches before. But I think he's kind of just up for whatever is going to work with this lineup. And right now it's leading off.
Maddie, this is 2 months now that, you've been watching Craig Counsell in the manager role. What have you noticed, or what has impressed you the most so far about Craig Counsell and the way that he is managing the team?
Yeah, he's very like calm, cool, and collected. Like it's a very like steady presence. I think in spring training, the biggest differences that we saw were things like how he structured the days, where they had individual focus days before home games, which guys loved, and we'll see how it plays out over the season, but was a little more regular season like. And then now that we're in season, we're seeing him make moves and really make a concerted effort to use his entire bench. I think right now that's probably what stands out the most. We'll see how he ends up using Alexander Canario, but up to this point, you've really seen him, making sure that Madrigal's coming in, even if he's not starting at third, he's coming in late as a defensive replacement, making sure that Garrett Cooper and Miles Mastrobuoni aren't sitting on the bench for a week of time and then called up into a big spot. So that's probably been the biggest thing that's jumped out so far.
Maddie, I appreciate you taking a few minutes to jump on and talk to us. Where can our listeners find your work and on the socials?
Yeah, absolutely. Sun Times website, subscribe, it's free or digital. It's free digitally, and then feel free to subscribe to I love the print paper. I'm old school like that. And so then with the print paper, in addition to my stuff, you'll be getting our desk's amazing layout work, and our cool Sports Saturday layouts are probably the biggest thing. And then on Twitter, I'm going to keep calling it Twitter, at Maddie_M_Lee.
All right. I appreciate you. When you come back home for the Miami series, I promise you the weather's not as bad as when you left it. So I know you got to be freaking out leaving Arizona's gorgeous weather, but it's not too bad here right now.
I hear it's supposed to be 100 here soon. I'm fine with leaving that.
Well, you take care and safe travels, Maddie. Thanks for jumping on.
You too.
All right, this is segment 3 of season 3 of episode 32, Cubs heart-stopping Arizona adventure on the fly, the W670 podcast. Don't forget to leave Crawly and I one of those 5-star reviews. All right, Crawly, you teased it earlier in the pod. Let's take a look at these standings. Let's see what is going on. I heard a rumor that the Pirates were swept in the Big Apple, and look at that. Cubs percentage points ahead of the Buccos.
And just percentage points behind the Brewers, 11-6. The Brewers, the Cubs 11-7. The Pirates are 11-8. So all bunched up there. Cincinnati 9-8, and St. Louis making a little noise at 9-10. But again,
still in the cellar. But still in the cellar.
No tears for the Cardinals in the basement. But Dustin, this has been, like I said, you lost your ace. You've now lost one of your best hitters. You lost your number 3 starter. You started against the Texas Rangers to start the season. You had to face the Dodgers, the Padres, West Coast trip, and the Diamondbacks. And your percentage points out of first place? I'll take that.
Yep. You take that anytime.
So, we had some sad news, Dustin, on Monday. One of the legendary Cubs, Ken Holtzman, passed away from the 1969 team. He was a Cub from 65 to 71, and the Cubs put out this tweet. And he also came back to finish his career in 78 to 79. He posted a 3.76 ERA in 237 games with the Cubs, including 2 no-hitters. One of the best left-handed pitchers in Cubs history. Rest in peace, and thoughts and prayers to his family.
Yep, absolutely. Our condolences. I've heard lots of stories about him. Not know that I've seen any of that, but condolences. It's always sad.
Right. Now, Dustin, as we were getting ready for the series in Arizona, the Cubs tweet out an announcement. We got a little bit of movement, a roster move.
Mm-hmm.
Alexander Canario is coming up. And we sat there going, wait, what? What's going on? Who's injured? Because that's the only way he would have come up.
Right.
And sadly, we got our answer. It was Seiya Suzuki was put on the 10-day IL. And on Twitter, everyone was sleuthing, looking for it. And sure enough, we found it. It was that last at bat that he had when he was in the Mariners series. And it looked like he pulled up a little bit limp, but I've seen him sometimes, look a little injured, and all of a sudden he comes back out there. So I thought, okay, back out there, not a big deal. Here is what Seiya had to say about that.
How does this Seiya oblique injury, I know it's left v right, but how does it compare to the last one?
Unclear. I think that it was, last time I think it was a more on one swing. This one kind of crept up on us a little bit. He says it wasn't on one swing, but hopefully he can heal quickly and get back. The time frame last year is a little hard to figure because he did it right before the first spring training game last year, which means he had no build-up, he had no at-bats, and so we had to take it a little bit longer last year with the rehab because he needed a spring training.
So, Dustin, right now it's looking like it's going to be, he's on the 10-day IL. It looks like this is going to be maybe a 4-week injury. And what Jed's talking about there is he's already had some at-bats, so hopefully it won't take him long to get started up again. Dustin, he was the Cubs' best offensive threat, hitting .305 in 15 games with 3 home runs and 13 RBIs.
Yeah, it's sad. It's probably going to be like 4.5 to 5 weeks because he's going to sit around for 4 weeks. Then he's going to have to go get a couple at bats, right? Depending on where the Cubs are at. Maybe it'll be, out at the iCubs, maybe it'll be the South Bend Cubs. You have to get a couple at bats going, and then hopefully he'll be back after that. A good question we asked today, who's going to be back first, Justin Steele or Seiya Suzuki?
I think they're both going to be around the same time, and that's going to be important because the Cubs have a lot of divisional matchups at the end of May. So let's get both those guys back in time. That'd be great.
That would be great. No doubt about that. All right. So that was one of the roster moves. The Cubs also picked up a right-handed pitcher.
Yeah, Julio Teheran. You remember him from his days with the Braves. I mean, he only played one game with the Mets. He was with the Mets, 2 2/3 innings. He gave up 4 runs, and that was it. But Teheran pitched for Milwaukee last season, which means Cubs skipper Craig Counsell knows him very well. Teheran started 11 games last season for the Brewers and sported a 4.40 ERA. So, with all the injuries the Cubs had, I thought it was a safe move. No big deal.
Yeah, safe move, no big deal. High ceiling, low floor. Another arm. Some of the guys that they're paying a heck of a lot of money to aren't delivering so far this season.
Now, the Cubs also made a flurry of moves after 2 extra inning games. They selected right-handed pitcher Colton Brewer and right-handed pitcher Hayden Wesneski. And boy, did that Hayden Wesneski move pay off today. And Colton Brewer has been throwing great for the Cubs. He's been the closer. Unfortunately, that means 2 guys had to go down. Daniel Palencia didn't surprise me, but Luke Little, I know he had that bad outing on Tuesday night, but now you only have one lefty in the bullpen again. So that's Drew Smiley. So to make room for Brewer, this is what I predicted. Merriweather does move to the 60-day IL. And
not great news there.
Nope. I kind of felt that. I remember, like I said, it's just not good. And so the Cubs will have more moves to make. Jamison Tyone will come off the IL on Thursday, according to friend of the pod. And then according to friend of the pod, Tommy Birch, Patrick Wisdom was pulled from the 4th inning of the Cubs game, took his bat and gloves into the locker room and disappeared. So he is hitting the crap out of the ball in Iowa. Seiya's out for 4 weeks. Maybe they want P. Wiz to play some right field.
Right. I mean, based on what we talked about at the start, what in the world is Miles Mastroboni doing in a corner outfield spot? I mean, you got to be absolutely desperate in my mind. Real quick note from the post game today, Crawly. Craig Counsell called Hayden Wesneski's outing this afternoon the best pitching performance of the season.
Yeah, it'd be hard to disagree. He was that electric. Yeah. That was what we were looking for last season. And so hopefully he's back on it. Now the Cubs finally get to go home after a 10-day, 9-game road trip. They're going to face the Marlins. They shocked everyone last year by making the postseason. They finished 3rd in the NL East, 84-78. They got that second wild card spot. The thing about the 2023 Marlins, though, Dustin, they were one of the most clutch teams in baseball. On May 10th last year, they set an MLB record by winning 12 consecutive one-run games. They finished the season 33-13 in one-run games, 41 comeback wins, and 9 walk-off wins. Now,
they like to play everything nice and tight.
The Cub fans know this all too well. The Miami took the season series against the Cubs 4-2. They swept the Cubs in Miami in the end of April, with all 3 games being one-run decisions, one of those a walk-off. And then the Marlins faced the Cubs in Chicago 1 week later, and the Cubs took 2 of 3, but they lost another one-run decision. So all 4 losses that the Cubs had against the Marlins were by 1 run. And so you're thinking to yourself, all right, the Marlins, that was their first full season playoff appearance since 2003. Cub fans, unfortunately, remember that all too well. The last time the Marlins were in the postseason was 2020, the shortened one, and they swept the Cubs out of the postseason again. And so you thought that they'd make some moves, but they didn't. Their big ads were catcher Christian Bethancourt, infielder Vidal Brujan, and then they decided to roll the dice with former Southsider Tim Anderson, coming off his worst season as a pro. They lost DH outfielder Jorge Soler, relief pitcher David Robertson, both former Cubs, and shortstop Garrett Hampson. So this is a team right now, Dustin, that's flopped out of the gate this year. They were already talks about being sellers after only 1 week into the season. They wrapped up a series at home against the Giants. They lost game 1 4-3 before taking game 2 6-3. They lost the rubber match 3-1. One of the worst teams in baseball, in last place in the NL East with a record of 4-15.
Yeah, they haven't gotten off to a very good start. Hopefully our Cubs can feast on them. Let's preview the games quickly.
Yeah, this is not, my favorite 4-game series.
Mm-hmm. Well, when it's against the Marlins at Wrigley, it's okay.
Jamison was activated off the IL. He is going to start. He's not, by the time this podcast comes out, he will be activated. He's 8-10 last year with a 4.84 ERA. Dustin, he got off to a terrible start. He was 3-6 with a 6.15 ERA pre-All-Star game, but then 5-4 with a 3.70 ERA post-All-Star game. He did not make a start in spring training. He was on the IL with a back strain. Most of the Marlins have only faced Tyone either once or twice. The Cubs are going to take on A.J. Puck, who's been under the weather lately. He had his last couple starts pushed back. He's a 6'7 lefty, making the transition from the bullpen to starter. He's 0-3 with a 5.91 ERA. Because he's making that transition, he hasn't gone deep in many of his starts, and he struggled with walks. His last start was on April 9th versus the Yankees. He went 4.2 innings. He only gave up 4 runs on 2 hits with 5 walks and 2 Ks. He's got a 4-seam fastball, a sweeper, and a sinker. No Cub has more than 4 at-bats against Puck.
All right. So somebody Cubs could take advantage of, perhaps. Yes.
Yes, sir. And then game 2 features Shota back at home against Jesus Luzardo. Shota's 2-0 in his 3 starts this season. Only game he didn't win was because he got pulled after a rain delay. Hasn't given up an earned run in any of his starts.
That's
against
amazing.
The Mariners.
That is absolutely amazing right there.
Absolutely. Against the Mariners, he went 5.1 innings, gave up 0 runs, 5 hits, 2 walks, and 4 Ks. Not his best start, but he kept the damage minimal. The Marlins have obviously never faced Imanaga. Jesus Luzardo has struggled, Dustin. The lefty is 0-2 with a 7.65 ERA. His last start against the Braves, he went 5 innings pitched, gave up 5 runs on 7 hits. He also features a fastball, sweeper, and sinker. The only Cubs who have more than 5 at-bats against Luzardo, Ian Happ, is 2-10, and Nico Horner is 1-6.
Yeah. Like to see Shota keep it going.
Yeah, and also I'd like to see Javier Assad keep it going. He's your starter in game 3. He's 2-0 out of the gate with a 2.16 ERA. He shut out the Colorado Rockies in his first start, going 6 innings, gave up 2 runs against the Padres and 2 runs against the Mariners. He's just a bulldog that goes after hitters, and the Marlins haven't really seen him other than Tim Anderson and Josh Bell. So they're going to go up against Edward Cabrera. He's 26-year-old righty who's been in the Marlins minor leagues for a while, started the season on the IL. He was activated on Monday night. He's only had 1 start against the Giants. He went 6 innings pitched, gave up 1 run on 5 hits. He relies primarily on a changeup, fastball, and curveball.
And then game 4.
Yep. Kyle Hendricks, we've talked about him, 0-2 with a 12.71 ERA. Nothing
as of right now.
Yeah, there may be some balls still flying out from that Arizona series. They're going to try to give Kyle some leeway. You heard, Jed Hoyer talk about it. Tim Anderson's hitting .318 against Kyle in 22 at-bats. Josh Bell is just 3 for 23, and Avisail Garcia is 6 for 21 for a 286 average. They're going to take on another lefty, Ryan Weathers, son of David Weathers, which is now making me feel old.
Right.
And he's having a good start to the season as well. He's 2-1 with the 2.70 ERA. In his last 3 starts, he's given up 1 run against St. Louis. He shut out the Yankees for 5 innings and gave up 2 runs in 6 innings on the Giants. He throws some heat, averaging 96 miles per hour on that fastball, has a sweeper and changeup. The only Cub who has more than 5 at-bats against Weathers is Ian Happ, who is 2-8.
Nice. All right, Crawly, let's get into the hots and the nots coming off that West Coast road trip.
Coming off that West Coast road trip, when you take a look at the hots and the nots here for the Cubs, is there anyone hotter on the planet than Michael Busch right now? I mean, that guy to me, like even the outs are loud outs. He has just been absolutely crazy, going 9 for 23 with 4 home runs and 6 RBIs. Nico Horner, we knew you couldn't keep him down forever. 8 for 21. He has a double, a triple, and 3 RBIs. Unfortunately, on the not, Ian Happ, 4 for 26 with a home run and 4 RBIs. And Christopher Morel, awful West Coast swing, 1 for 22. I still can't believe they walked him. And he only has 1 RBI in that time frame. So maybe give Christopher a day off.
Maybe, yeah. I'm sure he's going to have to get one of those 4 games off. I mean, again, you could have Miles Mastroboni play third base and let Christopher Morel DH. Or if it's a really bad pitching matchup, give Christopher Morel the day off. But no more Mastroboni in left field. No,
I'm with you on that.
No.
Couple guys to be careful from on the Marlins. You got Brian De La Cruz. He is 9 out of his last 25. Luis Arias, always a good hitter, 8 for his last 24. On the not so much, you're taking a look here at Christian Bethancourt. He's a catcher. He's not doing well. Neither of their catchers are doing well. Josh Bell is 5 for his last 22. And so and Tim Anderson is 2 for his last 10. He's not doing much in Miami. Right.
Isn't the other former White Sox, he is hurt, right? Jake Berger?
Yeah, Jake Berger has no oblique injury.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know he had an oblique. Anyway, that was low-hanging fruit. I had to take the swing. All right, Crawly, let's get a little prediction. 4-game set, Marlins in town. I'll go first this time. Give me the Cubs to take 3 out of 4.
I will take the Cubs 3 out of 4 as well, but I am nervous about the Saturday and Sunday game. That's going to be a tough pitching matchup, but I do like Assad. Sunday, obviously, until Kyle Hendricks shows me otherwise, that makes me nervous.
Well, that's the game, right? That's the game I'm worried about as well. Right off the bat, I'm worried about the Hendricks start. That's what I'm worried about.
Hopefully, he gets off the schneid here. Here we go.
Hopefully he gets off the schneid indeed. All right, Crawly. One more question before we wrap this one up. Which games are you going to?
I'm going Saturday for the fleece blanket giveaway.
Now are you only going because of the giveaway? Is that what's getting you down?
That's my main thing to get me out there. Yes.
Are you gonna need a blanket at that game, or how's the weather supposed to be?
It's gonna be okay. It's not as bad as what it was last series, but I'm your Huckleberry when it comes to giveaways. And I'm telling you, the fleece banquet looks nice. I'll have to remember to wear my Pat Hughes sweater shirt and show you the blanket. It's gorgeous.
Yes. All right. That's a wrap now. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Follow us on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Email Crawly and I, flythew670gmail.com, and you can watch us by using the 670 The Score YouTube channel. All you got to do is subscribe.
The Cubbies are coming back home. Get out to Wrigley and support them. Catch a Michael Busch home run. Go Cubs. Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!